Hi, this is Marge Beeler with RareAgent, and we're continuing our mentor series. And today we have Gladys Agwai, and she has a company, Ignite Within. So I'm going to ask you to take about 5 minutes, kind of talk about how you got to where you are today, and then we'll start into the mentor series.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Gladys Agwai, and as Marge said, I am a business owner. My company is Ignite Within, and I actually come from a corporate background and various executive roles within corporate. And one day, corporate decided to leave me. And based on them leaving me, I had to figure out, well, who am I? What am I supposed to do? Hence how I came up with the name of my company, Ignite Within. Because whether as an individual or whether as a company, business, or organization, you have to go within first to get some clarity about your objectives and purpose, and then ignite something within you to get out and then make that transformation that you want to make. And so after 30 years with IBM, coming in as a business owner, again, my role as a business owner with Ignite Within is around leadership and transition strategies, working through those with clients as a coach, as a speaker, and as a trainer, again, focused on professionals as well as business owners.
Great, and I appreciate that, and I'm going to let everybody know that actually Gladys coaches me, so it's been a lot of fun, and you've read my article on the 30 pounds and the SMART goals. This is the woman that started to motivate me, so thank you.
My pleasure.
So based on, so if you were to go into an organization, let's say 100 million, 50 to 100 million, and you maybe will be mentoring or coaching some of the executive staff, what 3 things do you think is very important to kind of come in and set the tone for them?
Well, what I have found working within my business and working with clients, and and I've worked with clients here in the U.S. as well as over in Africa, so getting that global perspective, it is really important for any individual executive business to have clarity. Clarity of purpose, clarity of objectives. Without that, you don't have a clear path to a plan, a clear path to make the transformation that you want to make within yourself as well as within your business. So the first thing is, how do we let's work on getting clarity of purpose, clarity of objectives. And there's some strategies around what needs to be done and the questions that need to be asked in order to make that happen. And then the second thing we would talk about is, what are those things that is inhibiting you from achieving that purpose and achieving that objective? Because when we are wanting to get out of our comfort zone, to grow, to transform our businesses, to transform ourselves, those fears come up. And a lot of times we push all of that down and we just keep moving, going 200 miles an hour. And I just believe that we need to just sit with ourselves to really understand what is the inhibitors that is keeping us from achieving those goals. What's the mindset of limitations that we might have? I call mind viruses, those things that can propel you forward or hold you back. Am I good enough? Am I capable? Do I have the perseverance? Do I even have the desire to continue to do what it is that I am commissioned to do? And then the third thing that I would say is that you need to make sure that you have clarity. You want to ensure that you understand what is, what are those, that mindset of limitation. And then the next thing is, you need to make sure that you are making wisdom choices, that you are going in the right direction. And so there are strategies that go along with how to go about doing those things. But those are 3 things: get clarity, understand what mindset of limitation may inhibit you, and ensuring that you're going through a process to be able to make right decisions to get to that end goal that you're wanting to get to. And through all of those things, I really have executives, organizations, individuals to look at it from a globally competitive perspective, because we're in this global environment now and we compete globally. So can you compete on a global stage? Because just as I have clients in Nigeria, they're competing with me, and I don't have to be in Nigeria in order to do that. And so as an organization, as an individual, how can you start thinking broader to make sure that you are competing in this global marketplace? So those are the three things I would say.
Right. And I appreciate that. That was great advice. You gave me that advice. So work through it, and I'm still working through it. Think about your career and coming into your career. Can you think of 2 or 3 individuals that were great mentors? And a mentor doesn't have to be an executive. Sometimes it's a manager or even a coworker. Just 3 examples, 2 or 3 examples. And how did they, 1, keep you accountable? And 2, how did they motivate you? What did they do differently that really kind of pushed you or propelled you forward?
I would say one mentor that I had early on in my career, he gave me an opportunity, a chance to get promoted and to do something completely different. And I didn't have all of the I's dotted and T's crossed to say that I was the best person to get that job, but he saw something in me and he gave me an opportunity. And so he really upgraded my feelings about who I was and what my capabilities were and gave me more confidence in me. And of course, he then, coached me and mentored me to help me and to ensure that I was successful in that role. But just the fact that he gave me this opportunity kind of out of the blue and say, Gladyss, do you want to do this? And I'm saying, yes. And then working to say, how do we make that happen? So I think as we are going out and we are in our career positions, having that courage that when somebody puts something in front of you, again, getting out of your comfort zone, that you say yes. And then you work out whatever kinks you need to work out to ensure that you are successful and do the work that's needed to ensure that you're successful. So that was one, really critical, for me. And then, another mentor that was really important to me, he really helped me, and that was later on in my life. He really helped me to get to know who I was, to really get to know Gladyss, what do you want, right? Not dictating and telling me, well, you should do this and you should do that, but really making me think through, what is it that I want? Why do I want that? And what are you willing to do to sacrifice in order to make that happen? And so he really just encouraged me to go down and reflect so that I really got to know me, that I really, once I knew myself, that I can then be me, and that also to love me. And so he was just instrumental, and I just take that message and carry that message forward all the time. So those were 2 key mentors that I've had in my life that have really shaped me and how I help to shape others as well.
Great. So I always like to talk about sometimes strengths and weaknesses or minor strengths. Sometimes we think our strength is a really good strength, but it could be actually a strength, and it can also be an inhibitor, right? Sometimes, like me, I'm very outgoing, and one thing that causes is I interrupt. I don't mean to, but I have an auditory memory and I want to get it right out. So instead of concentrating and listening, I try to flirt. So I've learned to compensate that. I ask in the meeting, can I turn on my recorder so that I am focusing on you? And then if I miss something in my notes, I can go back. And they're usually very nice about it. So based on that, have you done any testing or have any of your clients do testing to really understand their personality and how do they perform under stress and those type of things?
Yeah, and when I do that, I really go through, as I talked about, that mindset of limitation and those mind viruses, because how we are when we're in those stressful moments, when we're outside of our comfort zone. We get those fears and then we react on those fears, right? And so we have to go back, and a lot of times we don't really understand what that's all about. And when we're in those stress modes, we like to point the finger out and we focus on what that person did or company did or client did or wife or husband did or boyfriend and all of that. And so I take them back into themselves to say, what is it about this particular situation that is triggering this emotion of frustration or anger or sadness or whatever it may be in your life? Because what happens is that we then respond based on that trigger. We respond in anger. We respond in frustration. And when we do that, we will never make a wisdom choice. We won't make right decisions for our life, for our business, for our organization, for our employees. So I always bring it back into the individual to say, what's the trigger? Let's talk about that trigger and why it's brought this reaction in you. And I also say, let's just sit with yourself for a minute before you make that you have that reaction. Because we know when we're stressed, we feel it. We feel that anger welling up, that frustration welling up, and we just kind of go and we kind of spew things out. But we really need to hold back and just sit and understand it, where that is coming from, and then our response needs to not be from that stressed moment. Count to 10, count to 1, do something to change that mindset so that your reaction is one that's a wise reaction, a right reaction that's going to really benefit you and also benefit whoever it is that you're speaking with. So that's a process, that's an important process that I take all my clients through, and it's a moment-to-moment thing, right?
Yes, that's and I was sharing with someone else about when we met, and you were telling me, I don't like to get into the personal icky stuff, right? The sadness, I don't like that. And you were like, you got to sit there and you got to feel it. I remember that, and that was very uncomfortable. And then you talked about the mind viruses, but then the affirmations, and I'll tell you what's helped me the most. If I feel that coming up, I stop. I have affirmations on my phone, and I just start it. I take 5 minutes, I read them, and it's amazing because you're reading, you're not thinking about your mind viruses, right? And it calms you down. So thank you for that, because that's really helped me.
Definitely switches your mindset, switches that mindset immediately. And what I also tell people is that when you are in that moment of that negative tape going on, because that negative tape will just continue to roll and roll and roll. And you'll be 10 minutes in your head talking to yourself and you don't even realize it. And whenever you get into that moment and you say what you can't do or this will never happen or whatever is that moment, you should repeat 7 times something positive. And if you can't repeat it, something 7 times positive, 1, 2, something that changes the mindset, that gets you thinking differently about that moment, about that situation.
Yeah. We're coming in on our 15 minutes, so I'm going to actually stop. But I want to thank you. And if you'll hold the line after I stop the recording so that I can just follow up with you on a few things. And again, just thank you for your wisdom, your knowledge, and sharing it with everybody. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Marge, for having me. Thank you so much for trusting me with your audience. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hold on one second.